Greetings gamers everywhere, I'm Swipin92 and we're taking a look at all the spells available in Forsaken Realms Vahrin's Call. This video does of course contain spoilers for the spells, so if you want no spoilers in how the animation looks and just the look of the spells, well, don't watch this. After playing through the game as a primarily magic user, I wanted to do a video on the magic in Forsaken Realms Vahrin's Call. So in this video I will show off all the spells in the game as well as talk a little bit about the magic, what you might want to know and some tips around it. I'll most likely do another video on the magic soon enough, but avoiding spoilers in that one. Now first off, we can start off by saying that there are 4 different types of spells. There are Fire, Ice, Earth and Alteration. The 3 elemental ones are self-explanatory, but what about Alteration? Well, Alteration is the changing of physical things, like healing, closing wounds, and stunning enemies and more. Each spell type has its own skill list, and you can also go to the spell table in the alchemy shop in the hamlet to upgrade each individual spell to make them more effective, increasing damage and so on. This requires you to have a certain level in the spell skill list for that type of spell. So for example, if you want to upgrade Fireball to a certain level, you need to have a certain skill level in fire spells. Every spell in this video is level 1 unless specifically said otherwise. I also want to point out that I don't know everything about spells. Experimental a little on your own, eh? And as a last note, I use low-leveled weapon for most of this video because it complicated matters when I one-hitted a lot of the early enemies with my swords and bow. I've also removed all skill points in dual wielding and bow. We're gonna start with fire, because why not? The spell you start with in the tutorial is Fireball, and it's a low-cost, medium damage projectile spell with a short range at the start, but this can be increased by spending skill points in the fire skill list, plus damage over time with burning stacks. This was the spell I used the most when playing my magic-focused character. It gets good damage, good range, and the fire tick damage stacks quite good. However, each burn stack has its own timer, so every hit with the fireball won't reset the burn timer. It just adds a new stack with a completely new timer. It has a very small splash damage as well, but so small I won't talk about it anymore. Flaming weapon is pretty easy. It sets your weapon, or weapons even, on fire, but does not increase your flat damage to enemies. You will however apply a burning debuff to enemies. This burning debuff will not stack on its own, unlike Fireball and Scorch. Flaming weapon buff also applies to bows as well. Plus, if you switch weapons while the buff is active, the other weapon set will also have the buff. I wish I had known this playing on my first character. Another important note is that the burn debuff does not apply when using techniques, like combos. Not for the secondary attack, the heavy attack, either, nor lunge attacks. The debuff applies with normal light attacks, jump attacks and sprint attacks. Scorch is purely a damage over time type of spell. You flick your wrist and apply burning to the enemy. This one can be stacked. You can apply it several times to an enemy and the burning damage will stack, and it does a good amount of damage. Just like Fireball, however, each stack has its own timer, so you won't be reset the timer every time you apply the spell. It would be fun to see the damage it can do with a maxed out fire list and max level spell. I have not checked that actually. One weird thing is that enemies with shields, however, can block if they're blocking. Now, however, if you have started to channel the spell on them, they can't block it after that. Flames is basically a flamethrower. As long as you hold down the spell button and have a mana for it, you can channel this spell. It deals low direct damage and also apply a burn effect on the enemy. Now this burn does not seem to stack on its own. I haven't used it very much as enemies are quite aggressive and the somewhat low damage doesn't leave me much room to use it. Even if I were to max it out, its individual level, well, I don't know. Maybe I could use it for a group of enemies. Last of the fire skills is Wildfire. Honestly, the name is cooler than the skill. It's effective and has good damage. The spell does create a fire area around you that deals burn damage that stacks on its own, depending on how much the enemy has been hit. There are multiple small fire areas that are created around you, and the enemy can be hit by 1, 2, or however many it can be hit by. And of this burn effect will stack. So either you can one-shot enemies with this one, or they're gonna take a lot of damage still. Now the area isn't that big, and the animation leaves you open for being attacked, so it's a bit of a hope for the best kind of spell sometimes. But it's effective against a group of enemies. Just don't run in all willy-nilly. That's gonna spell your doom, probably. Now, putting skill points in the fire skill list does reduce the time it takes to cast the spells, so it does get faster than what you see in the clips. That goes for pretty much all the spells. As a last note on the fire spells is that I said that all fire spells apply burn, but not all does a stacking burn on their own. However, all fire spells can stack off each other. For instance, you can apply Scorch, go in with a flaming weapon, and then dodge back and use a Fireball to increase the damage over time further. Or just Fireball, that gives 5 burn damage per second, then Flaming for an additional 5 damage, 10 damage in total, and another Fireball for 5 more damage, which then becomes 15 damage per second in total in burn damage. Now, of course, the damage will vary depending on your fire skill level and each individual spell's damage. Second spell type I'll cover is Ice. Bursting Ice was an interesting one. I had never used it before making this video, so this one was fun to try out. Because this spell shoots out 3 small ice spikes that explode after a short delay. It deals damage in a small area around the target and applies the chill debuff to all targets hit, which slows them down. A target can get all 3 spikes on them for increased damage, but the slow debuff remains the same. And for normal human-type enemies, hitting them with 3 or even 2 spikes requires you to be very close. Now, some bosses are even immune to the slow debuff, especially the story bosses. And this spell does not set off traps, at least not when I tried. Not even exploding traps. Icy Weapon is basically Flaming Weapon, but with ice. It doesn't give any flat damage, but applies a debuff, the chill debuff, as you probably could have guessed. And as I said, that slows enemies down. It's very helpful against many type of enemies, but does not work against any of the bigger story bosses, as previous ice spell as well. Now this slow debuff doesn't stack either, and as far as I can tell, different ice spells can stack with each other, unlike flaming burn debuff could. Just like flaming weapon, this buff applies to both weapons, and it works also with bows. A slow debuff at bow range. OP! I really wish I had known this when playing on my first character. Icy Sphere is a projectile spell with decent damage, applies chill, and also pierces enemies, so you can apply this one to multiple enemies in a line. Can set off traps, short range at start, but can be increased in the skill list. Now, the damage is a bit lower than a fireball, and you could say that the slow debuff makes up for that, because the slow debuff can be very precious against the enemies, because enemies can be relentless in attacking you. But as most bosses seem to be immune to the chill debuff, too slow, but not the burn from fire spells. Well, in my opinion, that makes the ice skills a little bit weaker. Plus, the animation is slightly longer than, say, Fireball. Freeze. Simple. A frost ring around you. It deals no damage but applies chill debuff, and this chill debuff seems to last slightly longer on enemies than the other icy spells. And much like Wildfire, it has a somewhat small area and a long cast time, so it's risky to use at the wrong time. However, the cast time can of course be shortened in the skill list, and I'm not sure if the spell's area can be increased by upgrading the spell. No other spell gets increased area from upgrading, but maybe this one is unique in that. Rushing Ice is an awesome spell that I really like the animation of. The utility of it? Well, I would say that it's good, at least. It creates this big ice block that you then smash down on top of the enemy, applying chill. You can hold down the spell to aim the spell, so if you're targeting an enemy that you haven't engaged yet or at a distance, well, you can target that enemy with the spell. And if you just simply tap the button, you cast it directly on the enemy that you are targeting. But if the enemy is moving, you will likely miss unless they are close to you. The cast time is a bit long. I wouldn't say it's too long, as it can be reduced in the skill list, plus the spell, it sucks in a lot of cold air, like in the area, when you start casting the spell, and this applies a chill to all enemies in the area, even before the boulder or whatever block is smashed down. Now, however, if an enemy is entering the area after starting to cast, that enemy won't be slowed down. Keep that in mind. And you can't direct the spell after casting, and that leaves you open for a lot of hits if you, well, miss. Now we're gonna get down more to the earth and talk about earth spell types. Yeah, I can show myself out after finishing this video, thank you. No need to throw me out. First off, Upheaval. Ever wanted to shove a rock up someone's ass? Well, here's your chance. It's a basic spell, it has high damage and makes enemies stagger. Even the bigger enemies seems to stagger of this. But I have no idea if the knights do that, so yeah, take care. But it does have a somewhat of a long spell cast time for such an early spell, but the high damage makes up for this quite well. It has a very small area, however, and that's the biggest issue with the spell, combined with the slightly longer cast time. The second spell we have is Earthen Barrage, and this one is a personal favorite of mine. It has very high damage, even early on, especially early on, and the cast time is okay, and it can hit multiple enemies. Now, one big weakness is that enemies can be too close to you to be hit by it, which is not very nice of them. Stand so I can hit you, I say. That shouldn't be too much to ask, right? Anyway, the spell creates 5 small spheres that made out of rocks, each one dealing a decent amount of damage, and these spheres are raised out of the ground and can hit enemies on their way up from the ground as well. I've dealt the full amount of damage on enemies by doing this, casting the spell as they get close or I'm very close to them. This spell can also make big enemies stagger when you hit them, but it also has a short range, very short actually, if compared to other projectile type spells. Now, don't quote me on the making enemies stagger, because I'm not 100% sure you can make those knights in the palace area stagger from this spell. I'm not sure anything can stagger those guys. Earthen Shield. It's not the spell you expect. I expected some kind of actual shield that could block attacks or something. I did not expect to become Saturn, with rotating rocks around me, you know. Honestly, I used this ability for a time when I first found it on my mage-focused character, but I didn't use it that much. I maybe should have given it a better chance, but yeah, here we are. The damage is quite low, even though it is basically a passive spell. Activate it and then switch to another spell while the shield does it work. I should have tried upgrading it to increase damage, see how much it would improve. At first I also thought that enemies could be inside the range of it, but it doesn't look like it when I tested it now. Maybe they are hit less when they are closer to me, or the caster, but they're not completely immune to it. As a last note that you should take into account when running away with this spell is that it won't trigger claw traps. Explosive traps, however, those are open season on for the spell. Don't ever say I don't risk my life for these videos. Oh, and I almost forgot. This spell has a fixed duration, but it also has a fixed amount of hits it can do before dissipating. You will notice that as you hit enemies, less rocks are gonna be in that circle. So if you activate the spell, it's gonna continue on until either the time is over, or you have hit enemies a certain amount of times. I'm not sure if this can be increased with upgrading the spell. You'll just have to see for yourself. Raining rocks. That's the next spell. Stone Rain. It's exactly what you think it is. Makes it rain small rocks in an area, and much like Earth and Shield, it deals low damage that can of course be increased, but if it's worth it, I honestly don't know. What's difficult with it is that the cast time is somewhat slow, but it also limits you to a small area if you want to make use of the full effect. And considering the somewhat low damage, that could be maybe for the best to use the full effect, that is. But at the same time, it could also, of course, be used to just deal some little damage just because at range. And much like crushing ice, you can either aim at the enemy to cast it over that enemy, or you can hold down the spell button to aim it at a specific location. The last Earth spell is a nice one, if a bit risky if used at the wrong time. Quake is the name of the spell, and it's a high damage area attack that creates a ring of stones around you from the ground and knocks down weaker enemies and knocks slightly bigger enemies back. As I said, using it when enemies are close is kind of the idea, but it takes precious time to use it. Of course, reduced casting time in the Earth skill list will make it more useful in that area. And that timing it takes to cast a spell can spell your death if you're unlucky. Can definitely be useful if you manage to use it when the enemies are a few feet away coming towards you. The right timing will make enemies stop in their tracks, which is always a good thing. For the last spell type, Alteration, we have some simple spells to get out of the way first. And the first one off is Mend Wounds. Self-explanatory, it's a heal. Heals 150 HP in the first level, which is most likely a little over half your total HP at the point. Depending on when you buy it, of course. Costs quite a lot of focus, and heals more, of course, when you upgrade it. Regeneration is also a heal, but over time, as the name implies. It lasts for 90 seconds and heals 5 HP per second. The heal is increased in amount each upgrade of the spell, making you heal much more each second at higher levels. Costs a lot of focus, FYI. Inflict Wounds is a very effective spell when put together with the Barbed Arrow, the special arrow that you can unlock in the Bow special skill list. Both of these deal bleed damage, which can stack. Inflict Wounds applies bleed that can be stacked on its own by casting the spell more, and this damage can of course be upgraded, but together with the bleeding effect from the bow and the bleeding effect from inflict wounds, you can stack them together, which can make the enemy bleed out quite quickly. I'm very interested in trying this on suicidal difficulty, which is the highest difficulty. Petrification. This spell has 3 important notes. First, it's really cool, watching the enemy turn to stone and then crumble to dust. Secondly, it's really costly to use in terms of focus. Thirdly, it's incredibly slow. It's more of a hex, like a curse, that's gonna take its sweet time working. You apply it, and then about a minute later, I'm not kidding, the target turns to stone and crumbles to dust. By upgrading the spell, you can cut down the time it takes for it to take effect by a few seconds each upgrade. And applying the spell multiple times on a target also reduces the time it takes for the target to turn to stone. It's a very unique spell. Never seen a spell take such a long time to actually activate in any game. But it's so cool! The rule of cool kind of applies. I have no idea how the spell would apply and work with maxed out earth skill and maxed upgraded spell. I might show that in a short video someday. And it's never gonna be a fast cast, as it instantly kills an enemy. Probably can't be used on bosses, I'm guessing. Would have been really cool though, but for balance sake it would probably take 5 minutes after that first cast. A few of these last shots of this spell actually upgraded my alteration skill to, I think, to level 5 or something, which didn't reduce, I think maybe reduced the cast time, but I also upgraded the spell itself to level 5, just to see what kind of decrease in time you would see. It's a very small one, but noticeable. And the last spell for alteration is also the most random one. Somewhat literally, as it turns enemies into random objects. Transmogrify. Effective if you want to pacify an enemy for a short duration. Now, of course, the duration is increased with each level in the spell, and even with no points in alteration tree, it has somewhat of a fast cast time. Now, do beware that the enemy, or rather any enemy that is transmuted, will regenerate their HP at an incredibly high rate. Do not use it in the hopes that you can take a breather to heal yourself while the enemy remains damaged. 4 spell styles, 5 spells per each style. 1 is gain at the start. 3 of these spells are bought from the alchemy shop in the hamlet for 5,000 coins each, and the rest are found in chests or earned from the side quests. Have fun in collecting them, and no, I do not where you can find them all. I know where a few of them can be found or gained, but definitely not all of them. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I've been Swippy92, have a great life, and I hope to see you in future videos. Bye bye!